Hello everyone, friends, this is part 2, support me with a like and a comment, have a nice day. You're overreacting, Richard. You always do this. You make everything about yourself. She crossed her arms defensively. Jack is just a friend. You wouldn't understand. You're so controlling, so possessive. Maybe you need to take a step back. Her words hit like a slap across the face. I staggered back, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Controlling? Possessive? I've done everything for you, Jessica. I've given up everything to make this work. She turned away, not even looking at me as she spoke, her tone dismissive. You just don't get it, Richard. You're too focused on yourself. You've always been this way. I don't need someone who makes everything about them. I felt the air leave my lungs. The woman I had given everything to, the woman I had sacrificed myself for, was telling me that I was the problem, that I was the one who didn't understand. I felt like I was drowning in her words, trapped in a cycle of guilt and confusion. And for the first time in our relationship, I didn't want to fight anymore. I couldn't keep trying to make her love me when it was so clear she never really had. That night, I went to bed angry, hurt, and deeply lost. I had spent so many years trying to be the person Jessica wanted me to be, trying to be the man who would make her love me, and yet nothing seemed to be enough. Every time I gave, she took. Every time I tried to hold on, she slipped away. The next morning, as I walked into the kitchen, I saw Jessica already sitting at the table, her back turned to me. She hadn't even acknowledged my presence. The silence between us was suffocating, but I refused to break it first. I had nothing left to say to her, and she clearly wasn't interested in what I had to offer. I'm done, I finally said, my voice quiet but resolute. This isn't working, Jessica. It's never been working. And I can't keep pretending that it is. She didn't even look up. Fine, she said flatly. Do what you want. You've been checking out for months anyway. The finality of her words hit me harder than anything else she had ever said. It was the end of something I had clung to for far too long. I turned and walked out, leaving her behind. I didn't know what was next, but I knew it was time to move on. I remember the days following that conversation as if they were yesterday. The house felt empty. The silence in the air was deafening, as though I had cut a cord that had once held everything together. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, guilt, relief, confusion, but one thing stood out, I was free. In the weeks that followed, Jessica moved out. It was quick, painless, as if she had been waiting for this moment to arrive, too. She packed up her things and left with little more than a passing glance. I didn't chase her. I didn't beg her to stay. The truth was, I had already lost her long before that moment. What hurt the most wasn't just the loss of the relationship, it was the realization that I had never really known Jessica. The woman I thought I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had been a stranger to me all along. But through the pain, I found something unexpected. My son, Sam. He was the one thing that remained, the one constant I could hold on to as I began to rebuild my life. He was my purpose now, the reason I kept moving forward. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew this, I had survived the hardest part. I had walked away from a life that wasn't meant for me. And for the first time in years, I was finally free to be myself again. The days after Jessica left were the quietest I'd ever experienced. The house that once echoed with laughter and shared moments now felt hollow. It was a strange kind of peace, one that I had longed for, but now that it was here, I didn't know how to fill the silence. The first few weeks were a blur. I went through the motions: work, taking care of Sam, cleaning up the remnants of a life that no longer existed. I found myself questioning everything about the past few years. How had I allowed myself to get so lost in her demands? Why hadn't I noticed how manipulative she had become? And most painfully, how could I have been so blind to the person I was becoming? Every time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the man I used to be. Instead, I saw a stranger, someone who had given away his identity piece by piece, convinced that love meant losing yourself in someone else. But now, with Jessica gone, I was forced to confront the truth. I hadn't just lost her. I had lost myself. But through it all, there was one thing that kept me anchored: Sam. Sam was only 7, but in those early days after the breakup, he seemed to understand more than I could express. I remember one afternoon when I was sitting on the couch, staring at the wall, the weight of it all pressing down on me. Sam came over and climbed onto my lap, his small arms wrapping around me in a tight hug. "Are you okay, Dad?" he asked, his voice soft and full of concern. I looked down at him, my heart breaking. This child, this innocent boy, deserved a father who was whole. I wasn't sure how to do it, but I knew I had to find my way back for him. "I'm trying, Sam," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "I'm trying to be okay." And so, for Sam, I began to piece myself together. In the months that followed, I started making small changes. I began to rediscover the things that used to bring me joy, things I had abandoned in the chaos of my relationship with Jessica. I took up my guitar again, the one I had once played every evening before life became so tangled. It felt like a part of me was coming back to life as my fingers ran over the strings, each note a reminder of who I had been before all of this. Music had always been an escape, a way to express what words couldn't. Slowly, the melodies began to fill the void left behind by Jessica's absence. I also started running again. I had always enjoyed the quiet solitude of long jogs through the park, but Jessica had always thought it was a waste of time. "You could be doing something more productive," she'd often say. But now, with the freedom to make my own choices, I returned to the peaceful rhythm of my footsteps on the pavement. It was just me and my thoughts, and it was enough. But the most important part of my healing came from spending time with Sam. He was a bright, thoughtful kid, and I was determined to be the kind of father he deserved. We started doing things together, simple things like going to the zoo, building Lego castles, or sitting down to watch his favorite cartoons on the weekends. I hadn't realized how much I had missed these moments until I got them back. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, Sam leaned against me, his head resting on my shoulder. "Dad, I like it when it's just you and me," he said softly. It was one of the sweetest things anyone had ever said to me. My chest tightened with emotion, and I had to swallow the lump in my throat. "I like it too, buddy," I said, my voice thick. "We're a team, you and me." And in that moment, I realized that I had something far more valuable than anything I'd lost. I had Sam. And no matter what, I would always have him. That was something Jessica could never take away. As the months passed, I started to feel like a different person. I was no longer the man who had been consumed by a toxic relationship, the man who had bent over backward to please someone who didn't truly care. I had started to reconnect with myself, and slowly, my confidence began to return. I even found the courage to go out again. At first, I was nervous. Dating was the last thing on my mind. But one evening, a friend from work invited me out for drinks. At first, I almost said no, but something inside me told me it was time to put myself out there, even if just for a night. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the evening. I didn't want to rush into anything, but I remembered what it felt like to laugh and enjoy the company of others. I wasn't ready to jump back into a relationship. But I knew that eventually, I would be. As for Jessica, I hadn't heard from her much. We had exchanged a few terse words when she came to pick up Sam for the occasional visit, but that was the extent of it. I didn't harbor any ill will toward her anymore, just a sense of relief. She had made her choices, and now I was making mine. One night, after Sam had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping a cup of coffee. The apartment was quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of peace. I was alone, but not lonely. I was still recovering, still working through the scars left by the past, but I was no longer trapped. I was free. I picked up my phone and opened a message from a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. He was coming into town for a weekend, and he suggested we catch up. I smiled as I typed a quick response, agreeing to meet up. It was time to start living again, not just for Sam, but for myself. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. I still had a lot of healing to do. But for the first time, I was excited about what came next. I was no longer weighed down by the past. The future was waiting, and I was ready to face it. It wasn't long before I realized something important. Love wasn't about sacrificing your identity or losing yourself in someone else. It wasn't about trying to fix someone or constantly chasing after approval. True love was about mutual respect, growth, and shared understanding. It was about supporting each other's dreams and standing by one another in times of hardship, not tearing each other down. Looking back, I could see the cracks in my relationship with Jessica. They had always been there, buried beneath the surface, but I had ignored them. I had been so desperate for love that I had convinced myself I could fix everything. I had put Jessica on a pedestal, but in the end, it wasn't her I needed to fix. It was myself. As I moved forward, I started to embrace the idea that I didn't need someone to complete me. I was whole on my own. And as Sam and I continued to build our life together, I learned that sometimes, the love you need the most is the love you give to yourself. Thank you very much for watching. Please support me by subscribing, liking and of course commenting.